to AI Revolution Digest, where businesses get smarter. I'm Jesslyn.
I'm Celia. Together we show you how AI drives real results.
And because the future isn't waiting, let's dive right in.
How do you protect your business when cybersecurity threats evolve faster than your defenses? That is the question for today's episode. And now let's welcome our guest speaker for today, Sir Thompson. Sir, thank you for being here. Can you tell our listeners who are you and what you do?
Oh yeah, my name's Duncan Thomas. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Innoculator, which is an AI-powered tool for protecting applications.
So you said everything is AI powered. Right now it's the hype. It seems like a lot of companies just put AI to get funding from VC. So what does it mean exactly when you said your AI empowered program?
So we're really reinventing how vulnerability management works in software. So currently, I'll give you an example. So if you're unfamiliar with how software vulnerabilities and things work, you'd be familiar with on your phone or on your laptop, it'll pop up and say you have to update your software. We've got these big security problems. Please install this software update. And if you're good, you do it straight away. But if you're like everyone on the planet, you go, oh, well, it's really convenient to shut down my phone right at this minute. I'll do it later. I'll do it later. And every time there's that delay, there's security vulnerabilities that haven't been patched. Now, that's on your phone or your laptop. The same thing applies to software in everything. So whether it's, banking software, whether it's companies, organizations, regardless of what it is. So companies, what they'll do is they will run scans and they will get a long list of you need to apply this software patch to all of this software. And the problem is it is usually a long list. We're talking thousands upon thousands of things to do. And the global average now, current global average. So if you have a bad, with vulnerabilities, there's a scale on how bad they are. So it's 1 to 10. Anything 7 and above is very bad. Anything 9 is absolutely critical. Get this patch because it is super easy for the attackers to exploit this, right? So the global average to touch that application at a company is currently stands at 82 days. So that's 2.5 months before it gets patched. Now, interestingly, with the advent of AI, it used to be it took attackers 24 to 48 hours to start exploiting. That's how long it would take. So still, big gap between how long it would get patched and the attackers start actively exploiting it. But what we've seen over the past year is that's actually dropped. It's below 24 hours now because you can use AI to look at that exploit and go, cool, I'll write you some exploit code to utilize it. So the attackers are really taking advantage of that of AI early on. They often are early adopters of technology like that. And what we do is we do a similar thing, except we use the AI to write what we'll call signatures or virtual patches to actually be able to intercept their attempts to exploit it.
Celia, you have a question?
Yeah, so Innoculator's mission is to protect businesses from evolving threats, as you said. But as cybersecurity is a never-ending arms race, how do you stay inspired to lead an industry where the stakes are constantly rising?
I always say I'm an old head in cybersecurity, which is really quite funny because I've only really been in it for 15 years. And I sort of remember early days of cybersecurity. It really has evolved. I remember going and talking to companies about it, and they'd say, "Oh, yeah, we're not really worried about that because worst that happens is we'll still be okay. I mean, the data may get stolen, but we'll be fine. No one will know it came from us." That used to be the early attitudes to it. And then as the threat evolved and people suddenly started to understand what this looked like, and then with the rise of ransomware in particular, that really spurred private organizations to go, right, we need to do something about this. This no longer just hurts our customers and we can pretend it wasn't us who didn't do it. We need to protect ourselves. So it's it's always going to be a never-ending battle. I mean, you don't give up on things. It's not. It's like saying to the police, "Well, why do you keep trying? There's still crime. We've been policing for centuries now, and people keep trying. Yeah, let's just give up." It's part of what keeps it interesting, if you ask me. I've always said cybersecurity is the most interesting part of IT, and I know this because I started in what I consider the most boring part of IT, and that is database connectivity.
So I just want to ask about, because a while ago you said that organizations, it takes around 2 months. This was before AI, right? 2 months before they try to update. And then,
Still takes
because
two
I
and a half
wanna,
months.
yeah, two and a
Yep.
half months. And in fact, until now, people, they're quite resistant to change, right? Especially if you're in industry like the banking, where everything's quite regulated. So knowing that legacy systems are one of the biggest vulnerability in cybersecurity, what AI-driven innovations has Innocular, your company, developed to protect businesses still reliant on these updated systems without causing major disruptions to their operations?
It's a very good question. I will quickly, in defense of banks, I often say
Mm.
this because, yeah, as soon as people know you work in cybersecurity, you become their, oh, someone tried to scam me and all
Yeah.
of this sort of stuff, right? So that's across the board. Um, I will say this about banks. Don't worry about the banks. They're usually very well protected. People have been trying to rob banks since day two of when banks started. So in the past, it was people were trying to rob banks and go in and shoot it up and all that sort of thing. Give me the money and off they'd go. That you don't hear about that sort of bank robbery anymore. And you go, oh great, we must have solved bank robbery. It's like, no, it's a different form of bank robbery now. But banks themselves are very well protected. Now, legacy applications, banks kind of live on legacy applications, but they also protect them. It's buried behind a huge amount of things. I wouldn't be that worried about banks. I'd be more worried about every other company on the planet because legacy applications are a massive problem. It's hard to get actual figures on it, but just for your listeners, what is legacy software? Legacy software is something that the organization has said, right, we've done our vulnerability scan. We know that we need to patch this. It's got some horrendous things in it. And the reason it takes 82 days or 2.5 months for people to patch these things is not because they're lazy. It's because they have to go through their process. They have to go, right, we're going to test this. Does it break anything? How long do we have to test it for? Make sure there's not like a monthly transaction that happens that it's going to break. So they have to go through this whole process. And, before everyone goes, oh, well, you could get rid of that. We saw a really good example of what happens last year now when you apply patches in production environments, thanks to CrowdStrike. We saw what happens. Now, that wasn't a patch per se, but that was an update that went out. And you saw what happens if things aren't properly tested before you go and actually test them. So that's why there is this 82-day gap. With legacy software, what happens is they do that testing process, it breaks something. And then they go, right, okay, so we can either fix what's broken, which may be very expensive and it's been around for a long time, or we can just not patch it. And if we're not patching it, okay, now we've got ourselves a legacy system because we say, okay, we're not going to patch this. This is a legacy system. But what do you do to protect it? This is what spurred me on in creating Innoculator was exactly this question. How do you protect this stuff? And the answer is, at the moment, not very well. If you listen to a lot of, and you talk to a lot of CISOs and people in the industry, you say to them, what are you doing to protect your legacy application? And they'll say, oh, well, we try to isolate it on the network. That's if they're really good. That's what they'll do. They'll try to isolate it on the network as much as they can, but it still sits there and it's vulnerable. And then they'll use the phrase, we accept the risk. So we've acknowledged it. We've written it down on our big book of these are the risks we've accepted. We've decided we will have to accept that risk. It's a very flippant phrase. I personally hate hearing this because basically it's them saying, yeah, we give up. We can't do anything about it. Hopefully no one notices. That's what's happening. But these vulnerabilities, if you look at what attackers do, it's very easy for them to exploit them because all they have to do, if they go onto your network, that first stage, they get stage one, they get past your perimeter, what are called perimeter defenses, your firewalls, things like that. They gain a foothold into your network. Then the next thing they do is they go, right, I need to move laterally. I need to look across, what can I get to? So they'll do a network scan, they'll see what they can see. Then they'll do a vulnerability scan. They'll go, oh, look over there, we see a Windows 2012 server. And I wonder what we can do about that. So then they'll go to a website. It's very easy to do. You can go to cve.org, public available information, type in Windows 2012, and you'll get a whole list of all the vulnerabilities that should have been patched on that. And then they can pick or choose what they want to exploit and use that to exploit and gain access. So it's a growing problem. It's a massive problem. People think it's solved if everyone's moving to the cloud. I could talk for hours on why that could be the case, but also why it could not be the case. It depends on how the cloud migration. There's all sorts of stuff in that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you. As the threat landscape and the AI capabilities keep growing rapidly, where do you see AI reshaping the cybersecurity industry in the next 5 to 10 years? And what role will your company play in that transformation?
It's important to understand what AI is good at and what AI is bad at. So it's also, you see a lot in the media. You get people, it reminds me, and unfortunately enough, or fortunately enough, I'm old enough to remember the start of the internet. And at the time, there was all this hope, it's going to be this magical thing, it's going to transform humanity and all for the good. But there was also people who said it's going to be terrible, it's going to cause all these problems. And, and basically we're seeing the exact same thing now with AI, right? And generally the answer lies exactly in the middle. There'll be good and bad. Yeah, it's like everything. There's good uses, there's bad uses. What AI is really good at, and it's about understanding how it works, but what it's really good at is looking at vast volumes of data and working out underlying imperceptible to human brain or trends or little trends, little tricks that it's going to pick up that we wouldn't pick up because it's just mind-bogglingly large amounts of data. And actually, most of cybersecurity's problem is a large data set problem. So AI as a defender is really good, like really good. We're at the very start of what it can be used for, and how that's going to evolve. I wish I could tell you, but I would imagine it will make defenses a lot more proactive and able to actually interpret things. I think back about 5 years ago, there was a big push around behavioral stuff in how people are using software, how network traffic's working and whatnot. I don't think we've seen a really great implementation of that, but I think we will with AI because it'll be able to look at, again, huge amounts of data and ascertain, yes, this is normal or no, this isn't. Now, the flip side, like everything with every technology, the flip side is the attackers use it as well. So, and the reason they're a lot faster to adopt these things is because if they break something, it doesn't matter. That's not their problem, right? So they don't have any concern there. So they can adopt quicker. And it'll be fascinating to see how they adopt things. For example, one of the really cool use cases of AI now is actually in software development, in writing code. You talk to developers using AI tools to write code, and they're like, it's insane. One of the developers I work with, he said, I've trained the model so much now that I can effectively just write the comments of what I want this function to do, and the AI will write out the code for me, and then I just quickly proofread it and correct it. Bang, it's done. That same thing is going to apply when it comes to okay, I'm an attacker. I want to exploit things. Here's the CVE. How do I do this? So it's like a lot of things, AI will make it faster, both good and bad.
I want to make a comment on how you said that for AI, there's two people basically dealing on either sides. It's either, yes, this is the greatest thing ever. We're going to be super productive. And the other side is, oh my God, this is the end of the
It's
human race. And
and
I've
and it's
heard,
I
it's serious, right? It's like there are researchers out there that are actively researching on how AI is going to lead to World War III or something like that. So I'm more of a realist. Like, for
it's
me, AI is just a tool. It depends on who's using it, just like what you said. So,
it's it's
yeah.
funny. I'll just jump in on that because I put a lot of thought to this, and it's sort of an interesting one because it depends on it. It sort of shows if you're a pessimist or an optimist. So
Mm.
the optimist is AI is going to be this utopia. It's going to solve all illness. It's going to generate all this sort of stuff. The pessimist is it's going to wipe out humanity. Everyone's going to die. So,
Yeah.
and it really is these two polar extremes that you just sort of go, yeah, I don't see either of them. I see the middle course. It's going to be good for things. It's going to be bad for things. It's like everything in history. Whenever there's been new technology, that's what's happened.
Yeah, so like we've been talking about a lot about cybersecurity, AI. So I just want to ask you a personal question now. Like
Sure.
you co-founded this company. And I remember now, since Sally and I were in business school, our professors, specifically those in entrepreneurship, they always say, hey guys, you should start your company now because you have funding, you don't have responsibilities, meaning you don't have a family. The risk that you're taking is only for yourself. So I'm just asking, what made you decide to start a company now? Because you're not just risking your own money, you're risking your family's money, you're risking your family's future if this all goes down to flame. Not that it would, but you still took that risk, right? Like any other company. So what went to your head and decided, yeah, I'm going to start something like this?
Um, Honestly, like any idea, I think the best ideas come from. My primary thing in the industry has been in sales, so it means talking to customers, and so you get the best ideas from customers, and you understand the problems. Like the best people in sales will, the old adage in sales is you've been given, God gave you two ears and one mouth, and that's how you should use them. You listen twice as much as you speak, and you listen to what they're saying, you understand what the problems are. And to me, that's always been a guiding principle. I know I tend to waffle on this call, so I do apologize there. But um, listening to customers, and once I identified this problem, this legacy problem, and this whole patching vulnerability thing, I had heard from a customer. They said, "Oh, we've done this, and it wasn't a well done solution, but they managed to shoehorn some things in and make it work for this one particular instance." And I said to one of my co-founders, I was in charge of APJ for a large organization, their security sales. And when we finished up there, he said, "Oh, so what are you going to do?" And I go, "I've got this idea. Like, what happens if someone actually built a tool for dealing with legacy applications and using virtual patching as a concept?" And we sort of started mapping it out. What does that look like? And he's had 20 plus years on the technical side of cybersecurity. And we started sort of identifying, yep, you could do this, and this, all this. And then we hit a problem, right? So we said, okay, but how are we going to generate all of these, virtual patches? And the idea came up, well, maybe we could use AI. And I had a friend of mine who I had worked with in the past, and I said, I know he's been working on his own AI startup for a while. So I called him up and we talked about it a bit. He's got a cybersecurity background as well. And ran the idea past him. He got super excited by it, and that's what got us here. You are 100% correct. When you are younger, you can do things. It's a lot easier. You have less burden, right? Now, interestingly, the startups, I read there was a stat around startups that turn into large unicorns generally are actually founded by people who look like me, bald, old, in their mid 40s, because, and there's a number of reasons for that. When I was younger, I tried starting companies, sure. And if I'd known what I knew now, I would have been more successful with them. I would have. But, there's what you know and what you don't know, and what you don't know is what gets you in trouble. So now that I'm older, I'm more experienced, and I know exactly how to actually position it. When you're younger, you don't know a whole bunch of stuff, and what you don't know is what hurts you, and what you don't know, for example, and it's the things that will help you get over what you don't know are having a good network, bunch of people that you can call up and say, "Hey, can you help me with this? I don't know what this is." And that becomes something that's a lot easier if you've been in business for 20 years, because you have a role. Well, I'm not going to say a Rolodex, let's just say a mobile phone filled with contacts that you can ring up and say, "Hey, can you help me with this? I'm trying to do this." And they'll help you. So that's something that comes with age and experience. But, there's swings and roundabouts, there's good and bad on both things.
Thank you, sir. So even though we have AI, who some people think is going to replace us, one of the things it will never replace, will be replaced is leadership, intuition, and human experience. So before we
Yep.
go to our mini game, Celia, do you have one question to ask?
I was talking about the APG market. You work there and it's incredibly diverse. So how did you adapt to its AI-driven cybersecurity solution to address these differences in the APG market?
Yeah. So first of all, as you said, it's incredibly diverse. APJ is, a lot of people will think of it, oh, it's like Europe, you've got all these different countries in Europe, but it is more diverse than Europe. So Europe, because it's largely landlocked and a lot of people sharing borders, there's a lot of, shared borders and whatnot. APJ, you've got a lot of island nations, and not island nations mean they're a bit more isolated. So I find the different cultures in APJ are quite striking compared to Europe. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're not in Europe. I'm just saying it's probably a little bit more samey in Europe than it is in APJ. Um, it's also it's one of the most fun and vibrant places, filled with just wonderful people. So anyone thinking about what's APJ like, go to it, go and experience it, go everywhere. It's awesome. It is fantastic. But there are some things to know. So doing business, when people go, oh, I found this particularly in the US, people would say, oh yeah, you deal with Asia. Asia's not a country. Okay. It is definitely not a country. It is, I think it's 40 something countries all up, and they're all very different, and they all have, largely different languages and culture, certainly different cultures and different cultural expectations. So when you're going to do business in APJ, you need to learn that. It helps to learn the local, wherever you're going to, the country, the history. You don't have to be able to sit a history test on it, but it's good to know the background of it and how it came about. You're not going to get questioned on it, but it will give you context around things. I remember talking to a colleague once, and they were out from the US and they were in Singapore, and I said, "Oh yeah, it's big news here because they've just become completely water self-sufficient." And she said, "Yeah, my taxi driver from the airport was talking about that, was very, very proud of that." And I said, to understand the context, you have to understand how Singapore formed out of Malaysia and the initial threats that were done about cutting them off and all of this. So that is a very proud national moment. And she goes, now that I understand, after I explained it all to her, she's like, now that I understand that, it makes a whole bunch of sense why I'm hearing this as a big thing, because generally you don't think, oh, great, we're water independent, we're going to put that in the front page news. Same in places like Japan. You go there, it's a very different marketplace. very different culture in how they do business. Although I would say there is an overall, I don't even know if it's an Asian approach or to doing business. It's different to the US. So the US market, North American market I found it always found it a lot more hierarchical. So if someone says, this is what we're doing, this is what happens. When you go to Japan, they'll say, oh, you've got to, talk to the big boss and all of that. But what you actually find there is it's about building consensus in the team, and then they all agree on it, then they move ahead. That's kind of like the rest of Asia. And it's certainly my native Australia, that's the exact same way as well. If you just go to the big boss, they're not going to go out on a limb and say, no, this is the way we're going. They're going to say, right, what does my team say? What's the way forward? So that makes for an interesting time. Now, when it comes to cybersecurity in particular, APJ sort of was probably a little slow to get started. And in cybersecurity, the reason for that, so the initial vectors that still in 60% of cases or 62% of cases, the way that most attackers will gain access into an organization is through phishing. They'll send you an email. And the way most of the attackers, regardless of where they are going to learn is they're going to go, okay, well, I want to send an email to someone in the US. They've grown up with US TV in the background, that TV shows and things like that. So there's some cultural understanding now. None of us on this call are from the US, but we all know when Thanksgiving is. We all know when the Super Bowl is. We've probably all watched Friends, right? So we all have these sorts of things that we've learned over time. Same applies to the attackers. And they can use things like when Thanksgiving is, when the Super Bowl is, to send phishing emails. So what tended to happen was early on, they would send phishing emails in the US, target people in the US, because cultural relevancy, you're going to have a lot more success. And it was primarily they'd target English-speaking countries. So they'd target US, then they'd target England, they'd target the UK, then they'll target Australia, New Zealand, places where English is spoken was going to be next. Then they're going to go to the next tier, but the next countries, whichever they're familiar with, Italy or French. So there'd be a lot of French speakers all around the world. It was the lingua franca globally. So a lot of French. So they're going to start targeting France and so forth and so forth. What there aren't is a lot of people in these places who speak Japanese or necessarily understand, Filipino culture or necessarily understand, Chinese or Mandarin or whatever it may be, whatever they're targeting. So that allowed a lot of APJ early on to be a bit slower in adopting cybersecurity stuff because they weren't being targeted. They went, oh, this is other people's problem. However, they've since accelerated, and a lot of this has to do with the geopolitics of the region. Which is really, all of a sudden it's not hard to find someone who speaks Japanese who wants to infiltrate in Japan. There's all of a sudden there's a lot more activity at that sort of nation state level, and that has a flow through effect to criminal organizations or hacker organizations itself. So what we've seen is a massive ramp up across APJ in cybersecurity spend and capabilities. Good time in some ways, but as is often the way, it's driven by the need more than the desire.
Okay, sir. So now we're gonna go for a little game just to distress. It's just a
Sure.
simple yes or no questions. You just say yes or no, then Celia's gonna help me time for 1 minute. So Celia and sir, when you're ready, we're gonna start. Sir, you ready? So Celia, you
Yeah.
ready? Okay.
Yep.
So
Oh,
first question, just yes or no. Are hotel mini bars a scam?
yes.
Are Crocs fashionable?
No.
Should people clap after Zoom call ends?
No.
Can
Can
you
you
wear
wear
jeans
jeans
to
to
a
a
wedding?
wedding?
No.
Should you unfollow someone for posting too many selfies?
No,
Is using a baby voice around pets annoying?
no.
Should tacos be eaten in one bite if possible?
Yes.
Yes, have you tried that?
Yeah.
Eating a taco in one bite?
They're usually too big.
Yeah.
I
I
don't know
never
how anyone would, but I go, I can see why.
I don't know a taco that's small enough that I can
Yeah.
eat it. um are group chats more annoying than useful?
That's tough.
Group chats, do you find them annoying? Like more annoying?
Do I find them annoying? No, I find them useful.
No.
So,
Okay.
Time's
Just
up.
okay, time's up. Thank you, sir, for being here. So before we go, where can people follow you, reach out to you?
look, reach out to me, Duncan Thomas. I'm on LinkedIn. We're innoculator.com. That's with two N's. So if you want to find out more about us, please reach out or any questions or any follow-ups. We're we're in startup phase, so hopefully you're going to hear a lot more about us. And we've got some big announcements to come. And yeah, look, honestly, anyone has any questions or anything about what we've discussed today, I'd be happy to jump on and have a chat to them. So just hit me up on LinkedIn. It's funny, your question around social media, I mean, I solved that problem. I don't use social media.
Oh,
So
really?
I very early on went, I don't like this. So
Is it too
uh,
risky? Is it too risky to use social media now that you're a cybersecurity guy?
well, that's part of it. But even before I got into cybersecurity, Facebook, when it first launched, I remember jumping on. I was very early onto it, and I went, "Well, I don't know anyone on it because I'm like the only one on it." And I didn't see too much point to it. And then I thought about it, and I went, "So I get to keep up to date with people I don't speak to regularly. I'm not sure I want to. If I want to keep up to date with them, I'll just call them or go see them."
Mm.
So yeah, that's why it threw me. It's like, but if you're on social media, it's social media is a really good example. Talking about the double-edged sword of technology. So it's talking about the internet at the start. And it's like, yep, that's the internet. It's going to be great. It's going to solve all these problems. Social media comes along and everyone's like, oh, it'll be great. It's going to solve all these problems. I'm not sure it's going to solve any problem, but it has its purpose. But then it's all these other social problems that people haven't thought about came along. So I don't know. I each to their own is generally what I say, but it is interesting to see how that one's unfolding, shall we say?
So since you didn't use Facebook, were you just stuck in Friendster? Like, were you in Friendster? That was a big thing before Facebook. No,
And
you
and
didn't use
MySpace and all of those. Oh
MySpace.
no, 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 never went on any of
No.
those. Again, because I went, if I want to see them, I'll go see them. I don't need to see talk to them on this. Also, you're talking in the days. In those days, it was dial-up internet.
Mm.
So I had cable connection, but we were the only ones who would have in our area. And yeah, I in those days most people were on dial-up. Internet wasn't as big as it was, and it was very slow, and you wouldn't do video on internet like this. Let's put it that way. You actually wouldn't do voice either, because that would just be a nightmare. But yeah, each to their own. I solved my social media problem by just saying I choose not to partake. So
Okay. I think for my generation, that's very difficult to do now that most of us are quite addicted to it. Like,
I
personally,
have
yeah.
uh, family and yes, they tell me, oh no, but socially I have to do that. It's like, I don't know. It's not up to me. I get it. I do get that side of it. I was young. I remember. But what I like to say to everyone is, this is the cybersecurity side to me. Is I come out and I go, remember this. Anything you post online is there forever. Whether you delete
Mm.
it or not, someone's got a copy of it. And always remember that. So from a cybersecurity perspective, it's kind of useful because you can say whenever an attacker moves across your network, they leave a footprint. Great. We can always trace them. Um, But it's again that double-edged sword. If you anything you post online, regardless of what they tell you and all of that, it's there forever. So just remember that. And I do find it a little sad when I see stories about people who go for jobs and then they get outed because they said something stupid when they were 16 online. And I think, right, who here didn't say something stupid when they were 16? Like, I'm pretty sure everyone on the planet when they were at that age said many, many, many stupid things. So unfortunately for your generation, what you said when you were 16 online is all out there and searchable.
Do you think that's just because of the cancel culture? Like, because the thing is,
Oh
most
no,
people don't understand, like, we change, right? Like, just like what you said, like, we're
I,
different when we were 16 to now.
I, I don't know. I find it funny though because when you hear about companies making this actual decision, they'll go, "Oh no, we're not going to hire this person." Why? Oh, because they posted this when they were 16, and you go, right? Are they still 16? Why is that an issue? And people will make the argument that oh no, that's their inner person or whatever, and it's I, I don't have an answer to that. It could be. It could just be that they were an idiotic 16-year-old who posted something stupid online, and that's where my money would be. But if you're the hirer, and this is where, again, you get as you get older, you learn all this stuff. So if you're the hirer and you've got to go, okay, here's who we're hiring, and the CEO says to you, right, why are we hiring this person? I thought this person was really good. And they go, oh, yeah, but this person's really good. They've got all this, and this. And the CEO goes, but didn't they post? I saw a note here about something they posted online. And so now you've got to actually justify and go in and fight to get this person a job. Or do you just go, I'll present the one who doesn't have that blemish? It makes your job a lot easier. You don't have to put personal stake into it. You don't, like, why wouldn't you? There's that common thing around all humans. They tend to take the path of least resistance, and that's what's going to happen. So I, it's not a good. It's again that double-edged sword of technology. I don't have an answer to that one. I don't know the right way of getting around it. I don't know. I do think it's a big problem for the younger generation, but I know the way I solved it. Just don't post anything online. But I also understand that's not feasible for everyone. So,
Thank you, sir. So, last question, since Stella and I were both in college, most of our
yep.
LinkedIn connections are also college students. Number one question is, do you have any internship positions open? And what skills are you particularly looking at?
Currently, no, because we're building our MVP at the moment. We will be looking for internships later on this year. That what skills we're looking for would be dependent on the what we're trying to fill at the time. So early on, being a software company, you tend to look for things like you're going to want software developers and testers and things like that. Later on, and I would have to, yeah, one of my key part of my background has been in software sales and whatnot. I will say this to everyone at university: it gets a bad rep. Sales is a great industry if that's the sort of person you are. To go into it, it's good, it's fun. Um, I think the key to anyone at university, college, whatever you want to refer to it as, is find something you enjoy and you're passionate about, and you'll do great. And also, one thing I will highlight: so in cybersecurity, you get all these people who apply for a job, and whenever I'd interview them, I'd say if they're from outside of cybersecurity, I'd say, "You want to work in cybersecurity?" And one of the answers I always hate is they'd effectively say, "Oh, I've heard it pays well." Well, because it's an industry with good income and whatnot. And my advice to everyone is: A, don't say that in a job interview. Um, it doesn't look good. B, I would also say with anything, don't chase the money. Be good at what you do. The money will chase you. And that's the reality of things. Now, If you're good at sales, money will definitely chase you. If you're good at programming, you're good at whatever it may be. The world has a shortage of talent, not a shortage of people. So, be the talented.
Thank you, sir. And to our listeners, thank you for being here and see you in our next episode. Goodbye.